What's happening, folks? Today we are going to be talking about one of the smallest and lightest weight knives currently on the market, the Gerber STL 2.0. So if you have this knife or you're interested in looking at something kind of in this range, stay tuned. Alright, first off, I need to admit that I am typically a fan of Gerber knives. I try not to play a fanboy to any particular brand over another, but with effective branding, anytime you see a brand name, you know it stands for certain things. And with Gerber, I know that immediately I'm getting an American-made knife that's pretty well made, that is a very high value knife. And I like Kershaw knives, Benchmades are awesome. There's a lot of great brands out there. But with Gerber, I typically know their market is trying to get a good quality product that is high value. So that's something that we need to look at as we're kind of considering who would be interested in this knife and why. So originally I went to the store and I was looking at getting something else, and I saw this little guy sitting on the shelf, and it kind of piqued my interest. I saw how small it was. It seemed like a perfect knife that could just fold away and I could stick in my tackle box, or when I'm backpacking, I wanted to be able to carry a backup knife that is just tiny, that doesn't really add weight, that's just easy to carry, easy to manage. And I knew that with Gerber, I was probably going to be getting stainless steel. I was going to be getting something that maintains a decent edge. I was going to be getting something fairly well built. And so that idea put into this package of something small and compact was attractive to me. So let's look at specs real quick. So the Gerber STL 2.0, it would make you think that the 2.0 means 2.0 inches long. I think it's actually just a model number, because I measured the blade and it's 2.2, so 2¼ inches long. It is stainless steel on the blade. The handle's pretty well made. Now the blade it's got that, I think it's titanium oxide. It's that chemical coating on there that tends to be pretty durable. Gerber uses that on a lot of their blades. The lock on this knife is interesting. It's not, a lot of times there's a third piece in there. So you have the outside, then you have a third little metal almost spring that pops up. On this, it's actually the outside that doubles as the spring, which for opening, it gives you a very positive lock in place, but for closing, you basically have to pry that apart. And it's a little bit rough. So that's kind of the basic construction of this knife. It's 1.1 ounces, which is pretty incredible. Like, it weighs nothing. Like, a car key weighs more than this. And that's kind of why I was attracted to it. It takes up no space. Really, if you can throw it into an EDC system or a backpacking system or any other system without really adding any weight at all. So it's kind of a freebie in that regard. And that's what initially attracted me to this knife. But then when I actually started using it, my opinions kind of changed. There are a whole bunch of other knives that weigh slightly more than this knife. So this is 1.1 ounces. For about 2½ ounces, you can get a knife that has a much more robust handle, a slightly longer blade, and is all in all a lot more comfortable. Because I like how compact this is, but actually using it, that handle, I can get about just barely 3 fingers, more like 2½ fingers on it. And it does not give you a real comfortable grip. Now, if you just need this to cut through a piece of paracord, you're fine. But if you need this to do any sort of carving anything, it's real rough. I mean, this is so thin, which is good for when it's in your pocket, but it's so thin you can't really push down on it with any kind of force. And you can't really, it seats awkwardly in your hand too. So definitely a case of them sacrificing a lot of what you would want in a good handle in order to reach this compact size. Now, with all Gerber stuff, their marketing is really good, their packaging is really good. They provide you with a lot of specs on here. It was actually funny. Something I always laugh at is a lot of times these packages for knives are, it's so packed in there, I guess because they don't want people stealing them in the store. But they use real thick plastic and it's hard to get it out there, and you got to use another knife to cut it open. So I guess they're counting on people who are upgrading their knives, because if you don't have a knife to begin with and you need one, good luck getting into the packaging. But they provide all the specs on here. Gerber tends to be pretty good about that. Now, something that's really interesting is Gerber, yeah, they say they're American made, but really they are American designed. Some of their products are American made, some of them are not. Something that's interesting to note, you'll see on a lot of their low-end models, Fiskars, made in China. That's a company that makes scissors. So it's not really entirely a knife company anymore, and made in China. So this particular one, kind of fails my initial assumptions of why I went with Gerber to begin with. Now, if you wanted a knife just to stick in a pack somewhere, this could still be a good option, but I think you can spend just a tiny bit more, get something that weighs a tiny bit more, and probably find a much better option. I think this knife was only, gosh, $12, something like that. It was incredibly cheap, and knowing that it is also made by Fiskars in China, now I'm not too surprised at why it was so cheap. So I would generally recommend going with something a little bit heavier, a little bit better. There's a Gerber Evo, I believe it's called. I did another review on it. That's 2.5 ounces. It's got a 3.5-inch blade, a much more robust handle, and it handles a lot better, and it kind of fits the same context of use that this knife would accomplish. Now, since it's a knife review, we got to do all the standard stuff. We got to do the cut test. So it's actually, this is out of the box sharpness. I haven't sharpened this. So it's actually doing that decently. I'm applying, maybe a little bit more force than would be necessary, but it's actually got a decent edge on it out of the box. So that's a +1 for this knife. But a detractor that I found is that there is no clip on this knife at all. Now, when it came in the packaging, I thought, oh, maybe it was on the back side. You just don't see it when it's sitting in there. But they actually don't even talk about a clip at all. So that's something I probably should have realized. Oh, if they don't mention it, it's not because it's standard, it's because it doesn't have one. So it doesn't have a clip, and it doesn't even have a way to attach your own. It has a little hole right here if you wanted to put a lanyard or a key ring through it, but I feel like a lot of people are going to want this for pocket carry or carrying in a pouch or just in a pack, or even putting on a little strap on the outside of either web gear or a backpack or something like that. So it lacking a clip is definitely a failure in my opinion, and I think that's the thing that bothers me the most about this knife, is how difficult it is to fold closed. And maybe that loosens up over time. I've only had this a few days. It might loosen up, it might not, but it's not intuitive. It's kind of awkward in your hand. And I feel like if you want this knife for something that's going to be either in a pack or a pocket carry or something like that, go ahead and spend a few more extra dollars and get something just a little bit bigger, a little bit more robust. If you want to stay with Gerber, fine. If you want to go with the Kershaw leak or something like that, something in that range is a very good option. Something that will maybe give you a 3-inch blade, because if you're going to increase the handle size a little bit just to increase comfort, you might as well go with that and increase the blade size just a touch too. I think the blade length of this is actually fine. It's the handle that I have more problems with than the blade size. But if you're increasing the handle size, you might as well go with a slightly bigger blade. So I would recommend something more like that. If you are buying this knife or looking at this knife because you like the idea of something barely thicker than a quarter, something that's just so tiny and so thin and so discreet, you're better off going with the SOG key knife. I don't know if you've seen that. If y'all are interested in that knife, I might pick one up for a review. But it basically looks just like a house key, but it has a tiny little pen knife that folds out. Now, I don't believe it to be a really good quality blade, but it is incredibly discreet, and that's why you would buy such a thing. Or you would end up getting something like this. Now, I think this is just from, you know, one of those big promo companies that makes, you know, cups, t-shirts, whatever. They can put your logo on anything. This is a billfold, a money clip that has a knife that comes out of the side of it. And it's almost like a knockoff, like Victorinox Swiss Army knife type blade that folds out of the side of it. And now, is this blade decent at all? No, it's junk. But if you just want the idea of a knife that is incredibly discreet and folds up into pretty much no space at all, you're not gonna end up with a really high quality blade. So you really need to define kind of your usage context of why you would even consider something like this. Because I feel like this is kind of an average of two ideas, and it falls awkwardly in the middle. It falls in the middle of the idea of a really compact EDC pocket knife and an almost invisibly small, discreet stowaway knife. So I would recommend either fall to one side or the other, and don't settle awkwardly in the middle. So if anybody from Gerber is paying attention to this video, good job on the blade, good job on the coating. The handle sucks. This lock, I get why you did that, but it's awkward. So that's kind of just my quickie review of the Gerber STL 2.0. And most likely I will be taking this back and getting something else. So hope you learned something. If you're interested in learning more about any of the other knives I kind of discussed, please comment, let me know what you think. Thanks for tuning in.